Let's do it.
I couldn't leave this series hanging. I wanted to at least see Pokemon through to the end of Johto. Though across the next 20 minutes, I'll reveal whether the arc as a whole was good. I'm just happy to have gotten through a portion of this monolith of an anime. This video will cover Season 4, Johto League Champions, and Season 5, Master Quest, which together consist of 117 episodes, out of 275 currently. I've danced around my 100 episode rule a few times already, but this is the first time I'll review more than 100 half hours worth of content in a single video. Bigger isn't always better, that needs to be said, but fans tend to like these seasons, so they were clearly still doing something right. But no more faffing about with episode counts, no more assuming Pokemon genders, the games do that enough, and no more padding. Here's Johto League Champions. While Pokemon remained a very popular franchise across the time these seasons were broadcast, they still only had the Gold and Silver games and their Johto region to go off of. Crystal version came out soon after, but it was still set in Johto, and this whole second generation was planned to be a grand finale to the series. Game Freak had no idea if Pokemon would last very far into the 21st century. Sure enough, here I am 20 years later, but at the time, media outlets thought Pokemania was a fad that would die off within a year or two. Sure enough, it wasn't rocking the world by 2001, but it was still a lucrative franchise, and those second-gen games were starting to look outdated with the release of the Game Boy Advance. A third generation of games was commissioned, but they would take a while to release. Not as long as the second, but there'd still be a 3-year gap between generations. So where did this leave the anime? Well, when I left it last, I was critical of the third season, the Johto Journeys, for being very slow-paced with tons of filler episodes, not an amazing amount of character growth to balance them out, and Ash only obtaining 2 badges across the span of 41 episodes. Well, they fixed that issue in Season 4 right out the gate. He gets 3! But since he gets 2 of them at the very start and very end of the season respectively, there's even more time between them, and therefore more filler episodes. It depends on your definition of filler, plenty of Pokemon still come and go, so there's some incentive to watch it all in order, but not enough if you're only concerned with seeing how the cities, gyms, and leaders from the games are presented in the show. Shoot, I haven't even covered the story yet, and I've already moaned about the padding. It's just so strange how relaxed this season is when the intro and theme song emphasize Ash's growth and determination. It's kind of ironic, even if Born to Be a Winner is my personal favourite English theme song so far. Most of Johto League Champions is simply what you'd expect from the Pokemon anime. It's still about Ash, Pikachu, Misty and Brock travelling through Johto, meeting new people in Pokemon, and fending off Team Rocket every week. Advancements in this season are typically very minor, the biggest one being when Ash's Chikorita evolves into Bayleaf, and she has to learn to be more respectful of her trainer's boundaries. The other big one is the Snubbull that began following Meowth last season, evolves into a Granbull and gets retrieved by her owner. Not something I needed an answer to, but it's good to know the anime has grown the humility to accept when its experiments don't work and can let them go without a fuss. With the dub, the structure has been modified a bit since Johto Journeys. Episodes now begin with a cold opening before getting to the theme song, and the title card, Who's That Pokemon segment and end screens are updated, and the episode no longer ends with a music segment. I guess there was less content that needed to be censored by 4Kids. Speaking of them, I noticed the voice acting got gradually hammier across Johto. Whether the actors had gotten really invested or really bored is debatable, but there's always been a little annoyances with the English dub, ranging from some Pokemon sounding obnoxious, or messing up the packaging order so some production seasons start and end in weird places. It's a messy dub, but it's got its charm. Had to give them my peaks too, because we're entering a not very pretty period in their history. The dub is still watchable, and if you want easy, digestible episodes of Pokemon, nothing too serious, this is probably a good season to drop in and out of for quick bursts, whether you're a newbie and want to see how the show works, or are throwing back to the series for comfort food. Challenging is the last word I'd describe this middle season as. It doesn't have that definitive tearjerker episode or iconic battle scene. Almost every episode is either a cute romp with a new Pokemon, or a quirky new addition to the world. It does those sorts of stories rather well. Johto League Champions doesn't have high highs, but it doesn't have low lows either. It helps that the characters are generally all reliables. Ash doesn't go through any serious development in his personality or training skills, at least nothing we haven't seen before by now. I can tell he's learning from his experience, but he seems more modest about it this year. Misty's mellowed out significantly by now. You almost never see her and Ash getting into arguments, and when they do, it's over something important, not an immature squabble. Brock is the least consistently written of the trio in these episodes, not really needing to be a mentor now, but still flipping between offering exposition and gags about flirting with girls. It hurts to see traveling companions leave, but at this point, I felt like they dug deep enough into Misty and Brock, and they're generally still around for the buddy system's sake. Pikachu's still adorable as ever, but he didn't seem like a real focus in this era. He'll interact with the Pokémon and be a Duracell in distress when Team Rocket show up, but he didn't feel like Ash's super inseparable bestest friend very often. They seemed pretty focused on Bayleaf though, and of course they showed off Cyndaquil and Totodile whenever they could. The former is still a unique take on your trainer Pokemon dynamic, and the latter two are good pet characters. Yeah. But before you ask, yes, Brock's Zubat evolved into a Crobat, great for the two of them, and Togepi and Pineco are still fun comedic distractions. I can't tell what's going on with Team Rocket anymore. They're not as big of losers as they were last season, but as Johto goes on, they're made more subservient. Giovanni and the rest of the organization are a much bigger cloud over their heads, and they fall into debt, a classic anime trope I presume. As time goes on, they make Pokemon feel less and less like a 22-episode anime, and more like a 2x11 affair, where the second segment worms its way into the end of the first. Animation is still about the same as it was in Johto Journeys, a bit cleaner than the earlier seasons, similarly tighter action sequences and such. I understand compared to the modern seasons this all looks a bit limited, but when they're still on cells, the simpler animation complements the detailed designs well. It would have looked choppy if they went all in on the frames. It helps that the battles are a worthy reward for slogging through hundreds of minutes of lightweight episodes. There are some good ones though. Airtime's great. Somehow both gangs end up getting called in to record a fantasy radio drama, and it's just as weird as you can imagine. It does a great job sticking out with its concept, visuals, and humour. Hassel in the Castle is kind of interesting. Brock stuck with another lovely lady, and Team Rocket. That leads to fun interactions in this muddy cave they're trapped in. Also, Zubat's useful. Beauty and the Breeder serves as a nice end to the dynamic between Brock and his Vulpix, with him returning it to its owner while she's performing at a breeding contest. The winner of which is Houndoom Special Delivery is a fun little journey between Togepi and this mysterious Houndoom. I could care about the little egg here, and I appreciated them giving him a Pokemon to be taken care of by. It's a fresh dynamic. Freeze Frame was my favourite episode of Season 4. They remembered Jigglypuff was a thing for one of the last times, it's surreal catching up with Todd Snap again, and this is where the legendary appearances start to get really awesome. The Suicune and Raikou cameos were fun, but there's more awe to the legendaries starting from here. Current event sees Ash and Chikorita get stuck in an electric power plant. Fun times, but seriously, it's pretty gripping. And can you believe that of all 158 Johto episodes, this is the only time any of Ash's Pokemon evolve? Amazing. Finally, Machoke Man is one of the most fun gym battles of this era. I think Chuck's a great gym leader with an interesting relationship with Pokemon, and you can really sense that Ash had earned the Storm Badge by the end, physically and emotionally. After 52 episodes of on and off boredom, typecasting is one of the big duds. Two scientists spend a majority of my time arguing over what type of Pokemon a Sudowoodo is. I am so happy for the multi-type system, so episodes like this never need to be made again. Mountain Time is also a bore, but at least not as annoying. If you want to see Team Rocket balancing on a cliff for a long time, you've come to the right place. This feels like a joke the writers thought up, like they were cracking wise about how strapped for ideas they were getting, but the episode was made by accident. The Wayward Wobbuffet was my least favourite episode of Johto. Due to Wobbuffet's inability to speak, I have a limited understanding of where he's going in this mad dash and why, and I also can't stand how gullible the gang is at the start with the Poképod. There's being naive, Then there's begging to put Pikachu in a tight container that he could suffocate in. Unbearable's the old wacky misunderstanding that left me with a bad impression of Teddiursa, which should be near impossible. And the big balloon blow-up was just odd on Team Rocket's part. Meowth really likes hot air balloon races, no specified reason, and Jesse and James just make it difficult for him and do their evil shtick anyway, while Meowth's just trying to be a good sport. There's more good episodes in Johto League Champions than bad, by a long shot, but they stuck out more because this just wasn't a very memorable season for any major reason. While the exact episodes in each season is made trickier to tell because the dub usually has to split them up, and trickier still because they're then chopped up further for purposes of syndication, no wonder they'd switch to the Pokémon Company and Cartoon Network later on.
Rush, would you please stay on your side? I am sorry.
This mid-Johto range didn't invite much enthusiasm from me. This would change dramatically. This should be a mood lifter because this is currently my favorite season. I'd honestly say it's better than Indigo League, more tonally consistent, better animated, and equally fun story ideas and executions. Ash still has his primary goal of traveling the road to Johto, or in Johto, and competing in its Pokémon League, the Silver Conference. It's getting familiar, but he still gets there successfully, and they pepper in new complications so he still feels fresh as a character. He and Misty compete in the Whirl Islands for a bit in this sort of bridge arc between seasons. He's also given the task of taking care of a Larvitar who's so anime it's kind of incredible. I mean that in the sense that it's not exactly my thing, but I get the intent of it. I can grasp why people wouldn't like the Larvitar, and the fact that its trauma was caused by this Zap Brannigan schmuck, but this felt like a return to the early days of the anime, when Pokemon was a strange world that had serious dangers. This was the last season the anime's original head writer, the late Takeshi Shudo, worked on before retiring, and he always had a darker image of the setting in mind. Some of his plans were great, and it's a shame they were neutered by businessmen who couldn't get their appeal to family audiences. Others kinda took the piss, however. What I'm getting at is Master Quest had a near-perfect balance of lighthearted romps and more meaningful stories. This was also the end of an era in that it was the last season to be cel animated. They convert to digital colouring in a snap, and while I really missed how rich the visuals were in the old days, it had to adapt to survive, and this switch made the last couple battles at the Silver Conference more action-packed. I've seen that later iterations of Pokemon anime have longer, bigger, and heavier hitting battles, and I'd point to the digital ink and paint production method as the reason why they're that way, and you can see that evolution start up this season. One of the best things this run did for me was make me like some of the characters more. I was excited to see Charizard return whenever he did. He's still a prankster sometimes, but I could really feel his loyalty for Ash coming through. And Ash's mother I found to be a lot funnier than previously. But Gary is flat out fantastic. While he has appeared and disappeared a few times over the course of Johto, every time it seemed like he and Ash were getting friendlier. And at the Silver Conference, we can see why that is, and why things changed right before their journeys began. The big question that everyone was excited to see answered was which starter Gary picked. If you haven't heard, it was Squirtle. I'm getting a little carried away, but all of these new or reignited ideas come to show that Master Quest feels like a grand season finale. Kind of ridiculous to say now since there's 18 after this as of the time of writing, but the Pokemon anime has managed to survive the whole 21st century so far because it almost functions like a soap opera, with a revolving door of cast and locations, and with them styles and hallmarks. And sadly, that sometimes involves having to say goodbye. Already some characters like Todd, Tracy, and Casey have faded out and found their own things to do, and Ash can only carry up to 6 Pokemon at a time, so someone's gotta go when he catches a new one. But at the end of the season, the entire gang splits up to head back to their hometowns. Notably, after this, Misty never becomes a constant traveling companion ever again. She pops up from time to time, but not for more than a few episodes out of hundreds. It's pretty sad that this is the end of an era, however, I think they'd done everything they could with her character. She mellowed out, competed in a league herself, and learned a ton more about water Pokemon across these 270 odd adventures. People complain a lot about Ash having to experience the same things over and over again, to the point where the anime now doesn't really treat him like the same character he was in the 90s and 2000s anymore. And that's because he's been stretched too thin. Misty and most of the other Poké Girls were on the show for the right amount of time. I know the reason they're cycled out is a bit weird, but they're consistently fan-favorite characters. Also for weird reasons, I'll drop this topic. Is there anything else I can say? No? On to the best then. Around the Whirlpool has our heroes return to the ocean to start the Whirl Islands arc. I thought the Whirlpool angle was neat, and the legend they crafted around Lugia was well done. She's way better as a legend though. For Ho-Oh the Bells Toll is simply one of my favourite legendary focused episodes so far. Given he was the first legendary seen on the show after all, I'm pleased that his lore was expanded upon in proper ways. And the whole thing with the Tower Bells bringing order to the Pokemon world and taking them makes the Pokemon around nastier is a neat conflict. Just Waiting on a Friend is a wonderful ghost story about a house kept around by the spirit of a Ninetales who just wants its owner back. It's one of the sadder tales from this time frame, and I'm always down for something more emotional. Hocus Pokemon, in direct opposition, is a comical romp where a British Pokemon witch turns Ash into a Pikachu. Just the kind of breather episode that's weird and funny enough to stick out. I love Address Unknown. The Unknown are finally used in the TV series to good effect, the episode has really cool visuals, and there's a mystery element where the information is vague but enthralling. I'm happy too to see Larvitar's no longer as tortured of a soul. The Ties That Bind and Can't Beat the Heat do two things back to back really well. The first gives you the lowdown on why Ash and Gary are frenemies, and Can't Beat the Heat gives you a battle you've been waiting more than 5 years to see. If you're wondering, oh, shouldn't Ash be 15 or 16 by now? Honey, you've seen nothing yet. But spoiler alert, he wins, and they foster a lot of respect for each other. Finally, Gotta Catch You Later was a wonderful way to end the original series. The main trio go their separate ways, and Ash comes to understand how strong they made him feel, and can still make him feel with the right attitude. It's also, sadly, the last ever appearance of the contest cap, green shirt, and blue vest that Ash started his journey wearing. On the flip side, my least favourite episode of the season was Plant It Now, Diglett Later. This whole plot involves the gangs getting wrapped up in a thievery operation where people just take their parents' and grandparents' Diglett and Dugtrio from their village and they're perfectly okay with it, which is annoyingly harebrained. It also has the weirdest continuity error in the show where Jessie implies she's 12 years old. Xatu the Future is weird and dumb. There's this underground civilization that totally depends on Zatus to predict the weather, even though it's not predictable. Jessie trying to worm her way into the plot as a weather woman was kind of bothersome, and I couldn't care much about this loony place. Entei at Your Own Risk wasn't very fun either, having to see Larvitar not get along with the other Pokemon and them not understanding him. I shouldn't be too mad though, verbal communication between them is a pipe dream. So, here I am, at the end of the original series. 276 episodes, 273 of which were dubbed, 269 of which are still available in English. Thanks, Jinx. On its own, is this a good anime? I'd say yes, though my experience with anime is limited. I know the gist of equally popular shows like Dragon Ball and One Piece, but Pokemon managed to attain more universal worldwide appeal. Ash's first 3 leagues were a cute journey that were fun for little checkups. Catching up is a nightmare though, just getting through Kanto takes a while, and the Orange Islands were thought up just to bide time for the second generation of games, then Johto is a long, long road. While yes, looking up a canon and filler guide online would cut down a lot of time, I wanted to be a completionist and treat every episode with the same amount of attention, no matter what happens in them, and I wanted to experience the anime at the same pace as the fans did back in the day. Padding was definitely the anime's biggest drawback in these early seasons. I've seen bits and pieces of Advanced Generation and DP, so I can't be the judge on if they're better or worse in that regard. And I'll find out eventually. Yes, I'm willing to continue my Pokemon reviews through the 3rd and 4th generations of the franchise. Despite my moaning and are we there yet-ing, I still think Ash is a fun character, as of 2002. And I want to see him meet more people and Pokemon in new, exciting regions. I'm definitely keen on heading to Hoenn with him sometime next year. Annual checkups are the best kind, because I get about 1 year closer to the present day each time. Whoopee. And if I want to keep going, and plenty of kids back then wanted to keep adventuring for sure, I'd say this has done its job on selling the Pokémon world. Goodbye for now.